It doesn't take too long. Yeah. Just so I have it uploaded. Yeah, that's the thing that you know. That's not so. Oh, so no. So you have there's the table in here, and that's where all the other right, because since you're not on Wi-Fi, it's probably not. So it's like it's seeing the version of what it was last time.
I will take it out of the camera shot. I do, but not in the afternoon. No. Oh, I know. I just don't. I prefer not to have coffee in the afternoon. Right. Good. Yeah. Just super busy. Huh? It's nice. Yeah, I enjoy it. I'm super happy about the weather. Forgot my fucking glasses. Which I forgot. Hi. Do you have readers? Good. No, I just forgot. And I had. But if you had two, you would need. So I've heard people who do that, and I'm just like, I've heard everyone just your brain compensates, but it just freaks me out. Anna, is everybody here? Is everyone okay? Great, let's call the meeting to order. Good afternoon. Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the City of Coral Gables Historic Preservation Board. We are residents of Coral Gables and are charged with the preservation and protection of historic or architecturally worthy buildings, structures, sites, neighborhoods, and artifacts, which impart a distinct historical heritage of the city. The board is comprised of 9 members, 7 of whom are appointed by the commission, 1 by the city manager, and the 9th is selected by the board and confirmed by the commission. 5 members of the board constitute a quorum, and 5 affirmative votes are necessary for the adoption of any motion. Any person who acts as a lobbyist pursuant to the City of Coral Gables Ordinance Number 2006-11 must register with the city clerk prior to engaging in lobbying activities or presentations before city staff, boards, committees, and/or the city commission. A copy of the ordinance is available in the office of the city clerk. Failure to register and provide proof of registration shall prohibit your ability to present to the Historic Preservation Board on applications under consideration this afternoon. Lobbyist is defined as an individual, corporation, partnership, or other legal entity employed or retained, whether paid or not, by a principal who seeks to encourage the approval, disapproval, adoption, repeal, passage, defeat, or modification of any ordinance, resolution, action, or decision of any city commissioner, any action, decision, recommendation of the city manager, any city board or committee, including but not limited to quasi-judicial advisory board, trust, authority, or council, or any action, decision, or recommendation of city personnel during the time period of the entire decision-making process on the action, decision, or recommendation which foreseeably will be heard or reviewed by the city commission or a city board or committee, including but not limited to quasi-judicial advisory board, trust, authority, or council. Presentations made to this board are subject to the city's false claims ordinance, Chapter 39 of the City of Coral Gables City Code. I now officially call the City of Coral Gables Historic Preservation Board meeting of February the 21st, 2024 to order. The time is 4:05 p.m. Present today are, on my left, Mr. Silva, Ms. Dene, Mr. Aaron Half, Mr. Maxwell, on my right, Ms. Spain, Ms. Rolando, Mr. Gillis, and myself, Cesar Garcia Pons. First order is the approval of the minutes. Are there any changes or corrections to the November, actually let me state the name of the month, the November 15, 2023 meeting minutes? Can I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the minutes of November 15th meeting, 2023.
Motion by Mr. Maxwell. Is there a second? Second. Second by Ms. Rolando. Any opposed? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion carries unanimously. Ex parte communications. Please be advised that this board is a quasi-judicial board and the items on the agenda are quasi-judicial in nature, which requires board members to disclose all ex parte communications. An ex parte communication is defined as any contact, communication, conversation, correspondence, memorandum, or other written or verbal communication that takes place outside a public hearing between a member of the public and a member of the quasi-judicial board regarding matters to be heard by the quasi-judicial board. If anyone has made any contact with a board member when the issue comes before the board, the member must state on the record the existence of the ex parte communication, the party who originated the communication, and whether the communication will affect the board member's ability to impartially consider the evidence to be presented regarding this matter. Ms. Peronas, are there any deferrals for this afternoon?
Good afternoon. I do have 2 requests for deferrals for case file LHD 2023-011. This is the application for the designation of 415 Aragon Avenue. Representation has been hired by the property owner and they have reached out and we will be meeting next week, but they'd like to be heard at the March 20th Historic Preservation Board meeting. And the next item would be case file LHD 2022-007. This is the historic designation of 1221 Milan Street, which was remanded back to the Historic Preservation Board by the City Commission. This would also be deferred to the March 20th hearing. No other changes.
Both on the record, March 20th.
Yes.
So it's the first one and the last one.
Yes, the first one and the last one.
Okay. Thank you. Swearing in. If any persons in the audience will be testifying today, please rise and be sworn in. If you're here and you're going to speak today, please rise and be sworn in. If anybody's on Zoom and wishes to speak, to be testified, you need to be on camera. Thank you. Okay, let's start. The first item on the agenda for Special Certificate of Appropriateness, case file COA SP 2023-030, an application for the issuance of a Special Certificate of Appropriateness for the property at 517 Aragon Avenue, a local historic landmark, legally described as Lot 17 of the west 36.4 feet of Lot 16, Block 10, Carl Gables, Section B, according to the plat thereof, as recorded in Plat Book 5, page 111 of the Public Records of Miami-Dade County, Florida. The application requests design approval for additions and alterations to the residence and site work.
The single-family residence at 517 Aragon Avenue was designed by architect William Merriam in the minimal traditional style. It retains its historic integrity and serves as a visible reminder of the history and the cultural heritage of the city. The work proposed in the application consists of two additions to the rear of the residence. The first is a two-story addition to the northwest that consists of a laundry, kitchen, breakfast room, and bedrooms on the second floor. The second addition at the northeast corner consists of a one-story addition that includes a bedroom and covered porch. To accommodate the new additions, an existing laundry and family room will be removed, as will the rear wall at the northeast corner. Portions of the interior will be reconfigured as well. The additions are finished in a smooth stucco. The additions are in the appropriate location to the rear of the structure and do not adversely affect the historic character of the existing structure. The design complements the minimal traditional style of the historic structure and will restore components of the building represented in the original permit drawings. The two-story addition, visible from Aragon Avenue, is set back nearly 30 feet from the front facade of the house, and the proposed one-story addition to the northeast will not be visible. Staff requests that the following conditions be incorporated into any motion for approval. The roof is to be a two-piece true barrel tile. Windows and doors are to receive high-profile muttons and glasses to be clear, no tint or reflectivity, and provide note on drawings. Provide a note regarding the proposed stucco texture at the additions on the permit drawings, material to be specified for the new pool deck. Provide information and details of the proposed metal gates in the carport and side yards. Work with staff to possibly lower the height of the new trellis proposed in the rear courtyard, and a separate standard certificate of appropriateness is required for the pool and pool deck. Staff will handle administratively. Therefore, staff recommends a motion to approve with the conditions noted.
Thank you. Does the owner or architect wish to speak?
Were they all the same, Pat?
To point.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. I'm Anna Alvarez. I'm the architect for the addition and renovation to the Patel residence. I'm joined by the owners here, Pooja and Sean Patel, if you have any questions for us later. I just wanted to quickly go through the plans. Thank you, Anna and Kara, for the report. So the strategy was to do an addition towards the back and maintain the original volume of the house in the front. The house currently has, barbed fences and just kind of some unattractive conditions that we're stripping the house of. We looked at the original microfilm to bring back the window configurations. We're going to be working with a company called Palm City windows that does, although they're aluminum, they can provide the thin profiles, which is nice for this house. We're looking to bring back the carport, which was original to the house. The garage towards the west was added later. And we are proposing extending it a bit because right now it has like a thin structural wall at the end that is not great and has like a very small footprint inside. Just to go quickly through the composition. So the idea was to layer the house so that the larger volume is in the back, as Anna described, on the northwest corner, and a smaller one-story addition towards the east. So there's a small courtyard that separates the existing house from the new volumes. And it was the strategy was to do a series of additions versus one addition to also break down the mass. And these are some of the pictures. The rear of the house, which is the part that's getting most affected, had very little redeeming qualities right now. I have the original microfilm, if anyone wants to see it. And we have landscape plans, and, sorry, I was trying to go back to this image, if it helps to have the 3D up.
Thank you. Anybody have questions for the architect or staff before we go to public comment? Any questions?
Question.
Yes.
Trying to get to the page, the front elevation of the proposed addition with the circular window on the second story.
Yes.
Looks like that's going out to a rooftop deck. Why was that proposed to be a window rather than a door, another feature? It just seems undermassed for the size of the space there.
So we looked at, we were looking at some examples of the early deco houses in Gables, which this house takes some cues from. And we were looking at some where they added almost like an interesting detail like that of a round window. And it isn't roof terrace, it's just a flat roof because the space behind it is a bathroom, so you wouldn't be walking out on it. It's part of the composition to step up to the taller piece, so that's a one-story transition. One-story flat roof transition from the main house to the two-story addition.
Okay, I'm just looking at it on the same slide you have there.
Okay.
It just seems way undermassed for that amount of space that's there, but that's my only, I was just wondering if there was a technical reason that was done.
No.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for staff or the architect? Alex?
Just one question for the architect and staff. On the list of conditions, I think they're all pretty clear. I have a question on the one regarding the height of the trellis.
Okay.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Oh, yes. So you can see it. You can see it on this slide, and I have others. So the idea was to have almost like a hanging garden right outside of the dining room area. So we did make it a little taller than the eave of the house, just so that any plants that were hanging down would be at that lower level, but we can definitely consider it at a lower level if it's important to the board and to staff. You can see it here on the bottom as well.
Mr. Silva, what do you think?
Yeah, so you don't have an objection to working with staff to lower it if necessary?
That would be fine. Mhm.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the architect or staff? Thank you, Anna. We're going to take it to public comment, and if you need something, we'll ask you to come back.
Okay. Thanks.
Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak in favor of this project or case? Anybody on Zoom? Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak in opposition to this case? Okay, hearing none, we're going to close the public hearing, bring it back to the board. Any discussion amongst the board on this project? Any thoughts? Ms. Spain?
I love the new plans, very clever. I mean, it's really going to live well. And I do have one brief question for staff. Why is it that you wanted the trellis to be lowered? Is it visible by the street or something?
It's
or-
not visible. The original condition was lowered to just be in proportion to the opening that was at the rear, and it just fell a little out of proportion with that courtyard. So I thought maybe we could just bring it down just so that it matches the height of the opening, kind of more consistent with the opening.
Mr. Aaronhaft? No? Okay, I did fail to ask if there's any ex parte communications on this item, if now's a good time to bring it up. Okay, none. If there's no further discussion, does anybody wish to make a motion?
Yeah, I can do that. I would move to approve the design proposal for an addition at the residence and site work on the property located at 517 Aragon Avenue, with the conditions noted in the staff report, and also the recommendation to consider enlarging the circular window on the second story if you wish to do that, but obviously not a requirement, and approve the issuance of a special certificate of appropriateness with the conditions noted.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by motion by Mr. Gillis, second by Mr. Orlando. Can we please call the roll?
Mr. Aaronhaft?
Yes.
Ms. Dene? Mr. Silva?
Yes.
Mr. Maxwell?
Yes.
Ms. Spain?
I don't have an issue with the height of the trellis or the window, but I'm going to say yes. I mean, I don't think it's necessary to change either one of them.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it.
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Rolando?
Yes.
Mr. Gillis?
Yes.
And Mr. Garcia Pons?
Yes. Motion passes 8-0. Thank you. Next item, case file COA SP 2023-032, an application for the issuance of a special certificate of appropriateness for the property at 1409 Alhambra Circle, a contributing resource within the Alhambra Circle Historic District, legally described as the Lot 6 and the north half of Lot 7, Block 17, Coral Gables, Section E, according to the plat thereof, as recorded in Plat Book 8 at page 13 of the Public Records of Miami-Dade County, Florida. The application requests design approval for an addition to the residence and site work. Variances have also been requested from Article 2, Section 2-1014C, and Article 3, Section 3-308D2 of the Coral Gables zoning code for the minimum rear setback for mechanical equipment and pool equipment.
Thank you.
Ms. Couts.
So location map of the property, it's on the north side of Alhambra Circle between Cadiz Avenue and Ferdinand Street. As you can see, it's just sort of to the northeast of the water tower as you come around the curve on Alhambra. It's part of the Alhambra Circle Historic District contributing residence. It was designated as such in January of 2008. It's a 1940s photo of the house. It was constructed in 1930, designed by Anthony Zink, and there have been no additions or significant alterations to the property since its construction. So as the chair read, the proposal is for a two-story addition to the rear of the residence and site work, and also for 3 variances that have been requested from the zoning code that have to do with the mechanical equipment and pool equipment. We can go over those later if you want, or I can just explain the premise behind the request at the moment and then let the architects talk about it, which I think is probably easier. So there is an existing auxiliary structure on the property. You can see it to the right of this picture. That's approximately 6 feet from the rear setback as an existing non-conforming structure. 10 feet is required. So it's, as a historic property, you all can grant a 5-foot rear setback if it's consistent with the neighborhood context. But in this case, two of the required or requested variances increase the nonconformity by putting it within that 5-foot setback. So one of them maintains the existing 6-foot setback, and the other two are set well within the 5 feet setback that's being asked for. So that's where those come from. There are conditions that we want included as part of the approval process, and the architect is here to discuss.
Thank you, Ms. Couts.
Good evening. My name is Callum Gibb. I'm the architect for the residence. As you know, it's a beautiful house on the prominent corner of Alhambra. And talking about the addition first, sorry, these are a couple of pictures of the existing residence. Obviously, the most affected is the rear of the house. At the moment, it has only a single-story projecting bay, and the goal is to sort of add similar scaled elements to the rear to provide a covered terrace and some additional second-floor bathrooms. This is a general site plan comparing the existing to the proposed. The terrace is in the center of the rear of the addition of the residence. An addition is being added to balance out with the existing projecting bay, and then the terrace sits between the two. It's just a large plan. Second floor, there are currently 2 bedrooms which have a Jack and Jill bathroom, and the intent is to add a bathroom to each of those and then convert the existing bathroom to a laundry on the inside. The existing front of the house, the addition is totally to the rear and will not be seen from the front. The owners have done a nice job renovating this house over the last few years. So this is the main rear elevation that shows the addition. As I say, we created a sort of a more symmetrical feel by sort of sizing the additions to the right of the house there to be the same size as the existing bay, and then create the sort of a projecting center porch. We went back and forth a lot with the owner and with the staff on how those second floor additions should be roofed. And my personal thought was that the existing parapet is actually very high. And so if they had just sort of emulated that and wrapped it around without a roof, you'd have this sort of 2.5-story sort of mass right there in your rear yard. So the goal was to bring that down by adding a roof to each of the additions, and then again, sort of using the existing parapet as a backdrop, creating a connecting roof to sort of link the addition and complete the elevation. From the side, as you can see, the addition with its small slope roof, it's an odd condition that it does project above the parapet, but that's an existing condition of on the west side. You can see on the west side, the parapet sort of bites into the existing roof, and so we would sort of emulate that detail on the bottom of the drawing. You can see that. The section there shows that the linking sort of connecting roof is not full depth. It's quite shallow, but it will have projecting rafters similar to the front. So the goal was to sort of bring the rear to more in character with the front without sort of imitating exactly, but it felt like it was by adding these layers of detail sort of completed the project in a way. And that was it. As far as the addition goes, if you want to address the other variances. So this is sort of variance number 1. This is for the AC equipment for the garage structure. It's going to sit behind the existing concrete stair and align with the existing garage building. So it does project into the rear 10-foot setback, but does leave more than 5 feet. The other, oops, sorry. No, that's the wrong one. Okay. So the additional variances are for existing equipment and the proposed pool equipment. I'm not sure if I can blow this up, but in the image indicating the rear of the property, sort of the second column on the top, there are two large air conditioning condensing units sitting right outside the back of the house. And they were placed there when they did their last renovation, sort of a holding place, really. And the goal here is to move those two existing units to the area behind the garage. And also include in that, as part of the proposal, we have a new pool, and the goal will be to put the pool equipment in that sort of rear section as well. Oh, going again.
The other two are shown on A,
Yeah.
on A1.1 of y'all's packets, so the other two are shown on there.
Yeah, I'm not sure. There we go. No, it keeps going back to the same one. Pardon me. Let's try that one. There you go. That's better. Yeah, so again, on the right-hand drawing, you can see the three pieces of equipment. So fortunately,
You can point with that at the,
oh my goodness, you really.
should be able to.
Here we go. So we're talking about this area here. Fortunately, the amount of encroachment does leave us 2'6", which is sort of the absolute minimum for any sort of approved setback or for equipment or a building. So I feel that it is the best place for it, even though it does encroach into the recommended setbacks. So it's if it weren't there, you know, the other area would be out in this zone here, which I feel would be more of an eyesore to not only the neighbors, but also coming across in the front of the house. We'd also discussed this area in here, but that would also require a variance and would actually put you next to the neighbor. The neighbor in the rear, the portion where this equipment is next to, the house is quite close, but off to the right or off to the left if you're looking. And so it's in a little bit of a blind zone anyway, as far as there's not really any room for an addition there. There's not like a rear backyard area. It's really just a little corner of their property. So it felt to me that it was the least obtrusive place. And I know that in the report, going back to the addition, there was comment about what was described as a shed roof between the two masses, and they asked that be removed as a condition for approval. For me, I really like that roof. I think it helps soften the height of the addition and sort of connect those two tower elements together.
Could you turn to that page?
Yes, I can. He says
Maybe not.
confidently. Yeah, I assume so.
Just turn it off again.
There we go. So this is the shed roof as described in the report. And I think if it was not there, you would really read the height of that parapet as being quite abutting there, or quite intrusive. So I felt like by joining it with a small roof, it would lessen the feel that these are two towers attached to the back of the house, and more that it was one elevation.
Do you have a section of that in one of the drawings? I think you did.
I do.
There it is.
So this is the covered terrace on the ground floor. This is the roof of the tower left and right, and then in between that is a lower roof with projecting rafters underneath and tongue and groove ceiling. So it'll be a detailed piece, not just a plain element.
Can you go back to the elevation? And
Well, welcome any questions.
do you have access to the photographs that are in our report?
I have access to the ones, yes.
So in ours, for us, the photographs on page 3 of the photographs that are in whatever they're called, is that something that we can pull up, Kara?
On the staff report or on the submitted?
1409 Alhambra photos.
I do not have those.
I might have submitted that as a separate file.
So on the third page for the board members, that's the photograph of the back of the
Oh, right, exactly, yeah.
of the building. Third page? Mm-hmm. Yeah, is that in the report? No, this is like right along the line. So you can sort of see on,
I think it's this photo here.
it's similar to the second on the left,
This one?
up,
Up one.
that one.
That one.
It's similar
That
to
one.
that one, but right up close. So again, the images that we have on page 3 of the photos
Yes.
show kind of a direct view of the distance of the neighboring home and the hedge and the back of the carriage house. And it's a really good photograph, which is why I just wanted all of us to make sure that we saw it. That's a
haven't
little bit
seen
better
that.
than yours on the screen. I did jump in with questions, but does anybody from the board have questions for the architect or staff? Additional questions?
Actually, that was my question, how close the neighbor's house was to it, because it seems I don't think I have that photograph.
So there is an overbite between the two properties. In that photograph, the property to the rear does project beyond the line of the garage. But that house is at an acute angle. I think the street behind it is curved perhaps, or I guess Alhambra is curved. So it isn't a direct parallel. And so, and again, as you look into the picture with the tree, that's the corner of the house, which is here, and sort of opens up as it goes away. So it's as near to the back corner of that property as it could be.
Do you have the site plan or the survey? Because I think the survey shows the fence line, and it could probably,
I do have a survey, yes.
Yeah, it says it's 5 feet 8, I think.
So there is a little more room to the east, and that would be sort of further away, so we could endeavor to put all the equipment to the east of that little back area.
Oh, I see what you're talking about.
You see in the location plan, you can see how small so that house is sort of in the deeper part of that lot rather than the narrow part.
Yeah, the other house has no backyard whatsoever.
The other house is built to
Back
a minimum 5-foot setback and then sort of angles out. I think it's more parallel to the street than it is the rear property line.
Mr. Ernhaft.
I wanted to get staff's clarification because I read with importance the fact that within 3 feet of the property line, those auxiliary units were going to be placed. And staff stressed that immediately adjacent on the other side is not garage space, but it's a living space of the other home.
So the house on Cadiz, I don't know if you guys are familiar with it or not. It's the big 2-story yellow house, and it sits askew on the property line. And as Mr. Maxwell was correct, you walk out the living room doors and you are at the back property line. There's no backyard. So that was the concern, that by pushing units close to that property line, that you're, really close to the house. You're not at 15, 20 feet from a living space.
Right. And then currently we have a rear wall, property line wall, and the owner would be amenable if we needed to extend that, to help with a bit of sight and noise.
It's masonry, right?
It's a masonry wall
I
currently.
mean, putting it that close, I would be more comfortable if it were garage space, not living room or, dining room, active living space in the adjacent home. So it gives me some pause, and I was thinking if you did bring it into farther forward into that alternative area on your client's property where it's yard, even if you brought it forward there, you at least could hide it with nicely placed vegetation or hedge or something around it, so
But
that it's,
I mean, yes, the corner of the house, which is visible there, is a room. It's not storage. You know, it would be effectively to the side of that. It
I
wouldn't be
understand, but if you brought it on your client's property to the alternative site that you mentioned, which was farther forward in the large area on the right-hand side, that was when you're facing the front of the house and looking toward the rear, there was
Right, but I
there was
think that
space
would be the
you
least. I mean, it would still require a variance. It would be next to the neighbor, but it would also be the most visually detrimental place for it.
I understand, but you could hide that behind plantings and vegetation, I would suggest.
Mr. Gibb, can you go, before you go, Mike, sheet A10, and for those of us that have sheet A10, it's got the aerial photograph on the bottom right-hand corner. We can zoom in, and you can see specifically where things are. You can't see it where you're going to show it, Caleb, but we can see it here.
Oh, and you're on the
'Cause we
the
can
staff
zoom in.
presentation?
No, on sheet.
mine?
Yeah, A10, we can zoom into the
Okay.
aerial, so people can see it a little bit more closely. Yeah.
Yes, you can see the detached white square, and then you should be able to, you should see the roof of the. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, we can.
But if you move it where you were talking about, wouldn't it be just as close? I'm sorry.
Mr. Maxwell?
The mechanical equipment, is the mechanical equipment for the garage, or is it for?
No, there's an
entirety?
it's a process thing, but there's the existing permit for the renovation of the house. The last remaining thing is the location of the AC equipment for the garage. So we've put that in the goal with that being the least area that would require discussion. So it seems to be the best place for a piece of equipment. So that's in its own right one variance. Then the new work includes relocating two existing units and the pool equipment. So that would go into the rear.
Could they, I mean, what you've done is a really elegant solution. I really very much like this, so thank you. Good architecture. Is there a possibility you could put these on the roof? The roofs are flat, I understand.
They are, but
That directs all the sound upward rather than,
yes, but there is a requirement to have you would have to have the parapet at least as tall as the, so then you get into a problematic that way. Plus, with the desire not for them to blow away, you tend to have to reinforce the interior structure. The existing historic sort of hand-framed wood structure probably would need some reinforcing, which would...
so like a strapping or something like that?
You're right. I mean, yes, it would need strapping, but also maybe even vertical supports below.
Ms. Spain, then Ms. Rolando.
I was just saying that if you move it into the location that you were, Bruce, talking about, which can't be in the driveway, it would have to be forward of the driveway. And that would bring it, I think, almost as close to the neighboring house on that side.
Yes, unfortunately,
Because that's very close in this aerial. I don't know.
yes, I think all the lots are not orthogonal, so there's always a corner of a house.
If you moved it there, would that also require a variance?
Yes.
Because that's the overall setback?
Correct.
Yep. And we had talked about putting it on the west side of the house, because that neighbor is set back quite far to the west on the adjust, but that would need a variance too, at least for the relocated equipment. It would need overall and possibly like a 6-inch variance to be at 5 feet. The addition's beautiful. The house is beautiful. I get the problem.
So the goal is, we have factors not caused by the owner, or, obviously the house was not designed with AC and its rear courtyard is not conducive to have a a mechanical plant in the middle of it, so.
Mr. Orlando, then Mr. Gillis.
When given the choice of accommodating a less desirable use on the property versus putting it closer to the neighbor and where the neighbor has very little distance, I think the owner should accommodate that use rather than inflicting it on the neighbor. I love what you've done. I think it's extraordinary, but I don't think that we should be giving a variance that when there are other alternatives.
So there wasn't a question.
Okay.
Mr. Gillis.
Okay, on the slide that you're currently on, the photo that says back garden, it's kind of in the middle on the left. Okay, the stairs going up to the second story of the carriage house, why can't it go to the right of those stairs? What are you doing there?
The right of the stairs, if I go to the site plan, there isn't anything that would prohibit them.
Shape around it.
No, it would be, but it would be in their backyard. It's not where the house, although impressive, actually takes up most of the lot. So that, we're sort of fighting against ourselves on that. But it isn't we're proposing or requesting that one AC unit go to the left of the stairs. But perhaps the beauty of the stair would be diminished.
Yeah, but that house behind it, I mean, I'm not an expert on that house. I've been by it several times, though. That's also a beautiful home. And they have the unique characteristic that they're so close to the back property line. So for the reasons the other board members stated, I don't see how that would be fair to, we try to help you. We try to help the historic homeowners that have this problem, but at the same time, if you're hurting somebody else, then that's becomes a problem, because then what is their solution to that noise? They don't really have a way. You're going to knock down part of another 1920s home? So, thank you.
Well, I don't, well, that wasn't a question either.
Yeah, so let's try to keep it to questions for staff. We can have discussion after. So the initial was question. Mr. Silva had a question, then Mr. Ehrenhaft.
Thank you. Just two questions. One of semantics, right? The zoning code says the historic board may allow a rear setback of 5 feet. That, I assume that still qualifies as a variance.
Yes, but it's a doable.
It's sort of like
it's
a-
kind of in there if there's context. Yes, we
It's-
can give
it's
that,
a-
but it's, yes.
Okay, but it's still a variance, like the zoning code rules it as a variance, you can see it as a variance.
I believe so. At some point, Board of Architects could do that administratively, and then they took that away. So they can still recommend it, say, yeah, we think it should be 5 feet, and we can say we think it should be 5 feet, so that's good enough. You don't need a hardship. Does that make sense?
Yes, and my second question is, that language does not exist for side setbacks,
No.
only rear.
Thank you, Mr. Ehrenhaft.
Sorry, I just wanted to re-clarify. It's not just that HVAC is going to be put there, but all of the pool equipment as well. So you've got two sets of infrastructure. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And pool equipment has now been granted a 5-foot setback, right? It's not without a variance.
I have one more question.
Yes.
You didn't happen to talk to the neighbors, did you?
That's my suggestion. Maybe it gets
Because honestly, they
deferred.
may say, we never go out there because we've got like 2 feet of grass out there. Absolutely, we don't have a problem, and we'll put it in writing.
That's,
Because I would be shocked if they used that backyard. I mean, it's one thing if they're out there lounging around a pool and you've got the stuff going, but if they're inside an air-conditioned home and they're not going to be able to hear anything. I don't have an issue with it, but I would be shocked if they did. I would suggest just talking to them, but,
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gibb. If there are no more questions, we'll take it to public hearing and then bring it back. Thank you very much. Opening to public hearing, actually, I forgot to ask, and does anybody have any ex parte communications they wish to share at this time? No. Opening to public hearing, does anybody in the audience wish to speak in favor of this case? Anybody on Zoom? Anybody in the audience wish to speak in opposition? Anyone on Zoom? Okay, closing the public hearing, bringing it back to the board for discussion.
I'd like to also add something. You know, there are criteria for a variance, and I'm looking at the staff report, and they go through the different ones. So a lot of it we also don't have an option on. You know, for instance, one of them is that the special conditions and circumstances do not result from the actions of the applicant. They're the ones wanting to move the AC unit or the pool equipment. So how can you say that that wouldn't be as a result of the actions of the applicant? That's just one example. I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. You know, sometimes there's a case where there's 1 or 2 that are borderline, but when you have a case like this where there's so many, and Donna, to take a different perspective from what you said, just because the current owner next door doesn't have a problem doesn't mean, you know, that house could be around another couple hundred years. They're going to be, I've walked in areas like this where you're between 2 walls of concrete with this mechanical equipment, and it's just bouncing off the walls.
So if I may, this is something we've asked staff before. Number 2, staff is the one who said yes. Is there a reason why the special conditions and circumstances do not result from the actions of the applicant?
So that criteria, we look at it sometimes as in the placement of an existing building. So the existing nonconformity that is there, so like for the first variance, the building is at 6 feet, not 10 feet. So we're allowing them to continue the line of that nonconformity to put the new equipment behind the stairs. So that's why that one applies in that case. There's ways to think through it as we try to identify the criteria. In terms of, like, for example, an overall side setback, if you were to look at this property, the garage is set 2 feet from the right side setback, which would require a much larger than normal setback on the left side. So we would be willing to give a variance for a side setback at 5 feet because that's normal, even though it doesn't meet the overall because there's an existing building that intrudes. Does that make sense? There's ways to look at the way the buildings are placed on the lot to justify a variance.
Thank you. Mr. Silva.
Sure. I think you did a great job on the addition on the building. I think we kind of all agree. I think we're all stuck on the variances. I personally don't have an issue with the shed roof. I think it differentiates it as an addition, which I think is important. I also appreciate the extra band you did on that railing to differentiate it as kind of a different thing coming across. I don't have an issue with the variance that staff is recommending approval on. I think that that's a reasonable condition. But, and I would even be kind of open-minded if we were to look at Donna's suggestion of maybe getting buy-in from all the neighbors for all those other setbacks. But as it stands now, those 2 setbacks are difficult to approve because there are other locations on site. And if I were forced to pick and choose, I would, maybe look at doing something on the west side. We have to grant the variance anyway. I think that's a more reasonable location on the west side of the house. And you can get to a kind of a 5-foot setback there, which is more reasonable than 2'6". I think that 2'6" is a tough sell.
Thank you, Mr. Silva. Okay, if there's no further discussion, is there a motion or series of motions? Actually, before we do that, I do have a comment on number 1 with the shed roof on the north facade. I can see staff's point. It seems perhaps a little heavy, but I do also see the need for the connection between the 2 towers. Whoever makes the motion, maybe there is a condition instead of remove, it's continue to coordinate with staff or remove it completely. Remember, that's up to however you want to make the motion. Again, if does anybody want to make a motion or series of motions? And we're going to take them all separately.
Can we just clarify one thing?
Yes,
So
please.
if there's the possibility that you all want the applicant to reach out to the neighbor and get some sort of buy-in on the location of that, if will change your opinion, then those need to get removed from the approval from the site plan.
Yeah. So whatever you approve in the site plan today, approval or denial, if it's approval with the conditions above, there may need to be an added condition that the mechanical equipment, as indicated on the site plan, is or is not approved, depending on the variances. So I just want to be clear, if you approve a site plan that contains the mechanical equipment in one place, and then later deny the variance, that's a little contradictory because you've approved them in the site plan. So just to keep that in mind when you're looking at the approval of the design proposal and site work, because the design proposal and site work does contain the location of that mechanical equipment. So I don't know if you want to take them in a different order. I don't know if you want to defer some of the variances, but just to keep that in mind, that whatever motion should be clear about the contents of the design proposal.
So the variances should go first.
I appreciate that. Actually, if that's okay with the board members, let's do it in the reverse order from the bottom up. So if anybody wishes to make a motion and they don't mind starting with the last motion first, that would be helpful. Ms. Rolando.
I move to defer the motion to deny a variance to allow for the pool equipment to have a rear setback of approximately 4 feet 2 inches.
So, question?
Move to defer.
To allow them to
that
come back.
variance. Yes.
Yeah, for sure. And I just have I would be, actually, before we second the motion, city attorney, do we need to defer? Or do we just need?
No, certainly
we
not.
could just
but
leave it
if-
out.
If there's a reason for the deferral, such as reaching out to neighbors or looking at other locations, that would be the reason to do so, but you may certainly,
I'm sorry,
vote up or down.
do we need to vote to defer it, or can it just not be considered?
I would ask that either the property owner's representative ask for them to be deferred, or you all take action in some way, because it's been presented to you here before, and we've had a public hearing about it already.
Thank you, Ms. Rolando. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it, but should it be deferred or continued?
Yeah,
Either way, I understand the sentiment.
so there's a deferral, there's a motion to defer the third
We have to notice.
variance by Ms. Rolando and seconded by Ms. Spain. Now we're open for discussion.
Mr. Chair, if I can just note that this would be deferred to a date certain, so we don't need to renotice.
It will be
if that's the
continued
case.
to the next meeting.
Understood, thank you.
Ms. Denane, did you have some discussion on this item?
Yes, I guess in follow-up to Mr. Gillis's comments, I do have an issue with moving forward and different neighbors. I also have an issue with the noise factor with the AC. So I would prefer to just vote on the denial right now and prefer not to defer to potential neighbors weighing in on this particular issue.
Thank you, Ms. Denane. And that is our right. We can vote on the deferral. Mr. Gillis.
Okay, so I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I'm looking at the criterion number 5, that the variance granted is the minimum variance that will make possible the reasonable use of the land, building, or structure. So we're here to help people. I want to help people enjoy their historic homes and everything, but we've identified several other possibilities that they could use. This would not be the minimum variance that will make possible the reasonable use of land, building, or structure. And I'm concerned that years down the line that people are going to say, this equipment is just too loud, it's uninhabitable to, you have healthcare workers, like I know some that sleep during the day. In the summer, those units can be on all day. So anyway, that's my impression, but I totally understand what you're trying to do, and I think it's a good faith.
Thank you, Mr. Gillis. Any further
I
discussion?
have no problem withdrawing it and voting just voting up or down the denial, if that's the consensus of my esteemed colleagues.
So we can either take a vote or you can withdraw it.
I'll withdraw it.
Does the second have to also approve the withdrawal?
That's fine.
Okay, so the motion to defer has been withdrawn. We have no motions. Does anybody wish to make a motion at this time?
I'd like to make the motion.
Ms. Dene?
I'd like to make a motion to deny the variance to allow the proposed pool equipment to have the rear setback of 4 feet 2 inches. The minimum rear setback under the code should be of 5 feet as required by Article 3, Section 3-308, D2 of the zoning code. And I'd like to follow that up with this is a staff recommendation.
That's a motion by Ms. Dene. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Rolando. Can we call the roll, please?
Mr. Aaronhaft,
Yes.
Mr. Gillis,
Yes.
Mr. Silva,
Yes.
Mr. Maxwell,
Yes.
Ms. Spain,
No.
Ms. Dene,
Yes?
Ms. Rolando,
Yes.
Mr. Garcia Pons.
Yes, the motion to deny passes 7-1. Ms. Dene, would you like to make another motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to deny the variance to allow the relocated mechanical equipment to have a rear setback of approximately 2 feet 6 inches versus the minimum rear setback, which under Article 2, Section 2-101D4 of the Coral Gables zoning code is 10 feet.
Is there a second, Mr.
Second.
And Mr. Maxwell, can we have Ms. Rolando do that?
Oh, of course.
Ms. Rolando, would you like to second that motion?
Yes.
There's a motion and a second. Can we call the roll, please?
Mr. Aaronhaft,
Yes.
Mr. Gillis,
Yes.
Mr. Silva,
Yes.
Ms. Spain,
No.
Ms. Rolando,
Yes.
Mr. Maxwell,
Yes.
Ms. Dene,
Yes.
Mr. Garcia Pons.
Yes, the motion to deny passes 7-1. Ms. Dene, would you like to make another motion?
This might be a little more complicated. You can help me out. I'd like to make a motion to approve the variance to allow the proposed mechanical equipment for the auxiliary structure to have a rear setback of 6 feet 6 inches. Is there an extra condition I should be placing on that?
No, that's just the variance for the one mechanical equipment for the auxiliary building. It's a
Okay.
discrete item.
Okay.
It is, just for clarification, this is the equipment that is proposed to be located to the immediate left of the staircase?
It is.
Okay.
Is your motion complete, Ms. Dene?
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Rolando. Can we call the roll?
Mr. Aaronhaft,
Yes.
Mr. Gillis,
Yes.
Mr. Silva,
Yes.
Mr. Maxwell,
Yes.
Ms. Spain,
Yes.
Ms. Dene,
Yes.
Ms. Rolando,
Yes.
Mr. Garcia Pons.
Yes, motion to approve passes 8-0. And is there a final motion for the two items remaining? Mr. Silva?
Just a clarification or question really before anyone makes a motion here. So obviously, we're going to ask them to take a look at the mechanical units, right? So that needs to be incorporated into the motion. Are we going to allow them the flexibility to work within that 6'6" line now for the other mechanical units? Because if we are, we should probably let them know now, or let them know that it's not acceptable and they got to comply with all of the requirements.
So the 10-foot setback is applicable to the AC equipment. They've just changed the zoning code recently. 5 feet is for the pool equipment. So if you keep that 6 foot, then that's a variance that's consistent with what you just granted.
The six, because there's still one mechanical unit, or two mechanical
Yep.
units, right, that we need to
Yep.
find a home for.
The pool won't need one if they're within that 6 feet.
Thank you.
So this one's a trickier motion. Does anybody wish to make this motion?
Okay, I could do that.
Mr. Gillis?
No, go ahead.
Okay. I'd make a motion to approve with the conditions noted in the staff report 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So not including the removal of the shed roof at the north facade for the scope of work. And approve the design proposal with the considerations we talked about with the mechanical equipment for the addition of the residence and site work on the property located at 1409 Alhambra Circle, and approve the issuance of a special certificate of appropriateness with the conditions we spoke about.
Before there's a second,
Is that sufficient?
does anybody, Madam City Attorney?
Just to clarify your motion, Mr. Gillis, to approve conditions 2 through 8 and grant the certificate of appropriateness with a condition, with a consideration that the location of the mechanical equipments that were denied in the first 2 votes shall not be part of the approval.
Correct.
Does Mr. Silva had a question? Do you want to say anything in addition to that?
If you would accept a friendly amendment, or maybe amend your motion to give them direction as to whether those units are going to be allowed within a 6'6" line from the rear property.
Correct. So to include the ability to have the mechanical equipment within the, is it 6 feet 6 inches?
So would it be to grant a variance for the location of those within the 6'6" setback?
No, they need to come back with a plan as to where it's going to go and work it out with staff for a recommendation.
So it wouldn't be,
Then you're prejudicing your future vote.
I don't think we should pre-approve anything. They should come back with a plan as to what needs to be done.
Then I would just suggest that the motion as you made it is sufficient, and they can hear the direction from the commission today, and staff can, as always, work with any applicant to work on another application for variance, if they so choose to come forward with another
Okay.
variance application. But rather than giving them specific insight into your future voting, we should let them decide to submit or not another variance application.
Mr. Silva, is it your consideration to see if there's something that we can vote on today?
I would like to avoid them having to come back again. I think we should either tell them that 6'6" is going to be permitted, or it's not going to be permitted.
Madam City Attorney, can we, Madam City Attorney,
She's thinking of that.
can
I'm sorry, what was the question, Mr. Silva?
can the board, without drawings showing the location of the mechanical equipment, give a distance as part of our motion?
Assuming that the variances that were noticed, people were given proper notice, are larger than what is proposed here, I think it would likely be sufficient. I would suggest that they need to be demonstrated on the plans where they would be, not just a general setback, because people may have stronger opinions if it's further east, further west, et cetera. So while I understand the sentiment, unless the applicant has a proposal he'd like to show today, showing where those are, or defer consideration of this item to another meeting, I would suggest not granting a sort of blank check.
Thank you, Madam City
Variance.
Attorney. There's a motion. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Does anybody have a friendly amendment to request? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Can we clarify the motion, please?
So just to repeat the motion as I have it, that it's a motion to approve with conditions 2 through 8, and not granting any of the mechanical equipment variances that were in the first and second votes taken today about the 2'6" and 4'2" setbacks. That equipment is not included as part of the approval and the issuance of a COA.
Thank you, Madam City Attorney. Can we call the roll?
Mr. Ehrenhaft?
Yes.
Ms. Dene?
Yes.
Ms. Rolando?
Yes.
Mr. Maxwell?
Yes.
Ms. Spain?
Yes.
Mr. Gillis?
Yes.
Mr. Silva?
Yes.
And Mr. Garcia Ponce?
Yes, motion passes 8-0. Thank you, everybody. That was a great way to resolve that one.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gibb,
Yes. We
Yeah, that was
approved
the
it.
last one.
Yeah, we approved it.
Yes, it was approval with the conditions 2 through 8, so not the condition for the shed roof. And the mechanical equipment variances for the 2'6" and 4'2" are not included in the approval, but the 6'6" variance that was approved is included in the site plan approval.
And the shed plan's okay to stay. Who was the second on that motion?
Mr. Silva. Thank you. Next case Case file COA SP 2024-006, an application for the issuance of a special certificate of appropriateness for the property at 1316 Alhambra Circle, a contributing resource within the Alhambra Circle Historic District legally described as lots 9 and 10, block 15, Coral Gables, section E, according to the plat thereof, as recorded in Plat Book 8, page 13 of the Public Records of Miami-Dade County, Florida. The application requests design approval to replace the original front door of the residence. At this time, does anybody have any ex parte communications on this item? No. Madam Couts.
Sorry, if you can put the PowerPoint back up, please? Thank you. So this is, that's right, it's a location map of the property. It is on Alhambra Circle, also a contributing resource designated in 2008. It was built circa 1924. Permit number 1193 in the city, designed by the team of Frank Wyatt Woods and John Tracy. The applicant is requesting design approval for the replacement of the original front door, entry door. The proposal seeks to replace the existing door with an aluminum impact-resistant door. Staff is recommending denial of the application. When we point to Secretary of the Interior Standards number 6, which is features shall be repaired rather than replaced. We had a site visit and did not note severe deterioration of this door, which we believe is the only original remaining door feature still remaining on this house. So these are pictures of the door in question. That's all we have.
Thank you.
So, there should be another PowerPoint. Yeah, there you go.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kevin. I work with the contracting company that is contracted to replace the front door or propose to replace the front door. This is as shown before, the original door. Now, there is some history of faulty hardware. The door has had hardware attempts to fix the hardware. As you can see around the handle, there's starting to see some rot on the actual door. The homeowner has attempted to reach out to locksmith companies to have some of that stuff replaced, but they can't guarantee, restoration of the door and for it to still be structurally sound. Now, it was recommended by the historic staff that we would install shutters to impact the door. Now, the only issue with that is on the previous slide, if you can tell, there's a wall protruding directly on the right side of the door, and then a light fixture fixed on the left side. So to have panels and rails to be fitted to slide in the panels, light fixture would obstruct. Now, there is the possibility, I guess you can say, of accordion shutters. However, I think you guys might agree that that's quite the eyesore from a street point of view. Now, we recognize that the door is an historic property, and we've made attempts with manufacturers to try to replicate the door as best as possible, while still providing high-velocity hurricane zone protection, as well as the aesthetic of the door. So you can see here, we have a CAD drawing of the orientation of the door configuration, as well as the wood grain sample that the door would have. Are there any questions?
Question, please.
Please, Mr. Gillis.
Do you have a side-by-side of the existing and proposed door? Are they basically identical, or what are the differences?
So the only differences in the door, if you can, So the only differences in the door, and it's purely how the door is manufactured, is you'll have this, these paneling that'll go around, whereas on the original door, it's just the vertical slats. Now, it's not to say that, I guess, the same profile is, in a way, but not significantly created with the frame of the door that's existing. But, yeah, as mentioned, the paneling will be there to try to resemble the door as best as possible.
And it's aluminum.
It is aluminum.
And it's outswinging.
It will be outswing, so any water infiltration code would be met.
Yeah, which is code.
I really miss my in-swinging door. When I lived in a historic home, I thought it was so much more elegant. And now all of the hurricane requirements, they're all outswinging, and I now live in a new townhouse, and I have an outswinging door, which I am not fond of. I'm just putting that in.
Any questions for staff?
Hurricane fabric, is that not possible? I see hurricane fabric being used more.
That could be an option. However, there's still the issue with as far as the owner attempts at trying to have hardware fixed for the door. There is a concern for the safety of the individuals in the home, for the homeowner. They have children that live there as well. And they do have a concern of, and not that Coral Gables is, a bad neighborhood by any stretch of the imagination, but that does weigh on the homeowner's conscience.
Just so you know, I have a close friend who has a door very similar to this, been through Hurricane Andrew. She had a home invasion. They didn't come in that way. I mean, these doors, I don't know about this particular one, but I can tell you the ones I've seen, I wish that I had an original Coral Gables door. I really do. So, thank you.
Is there the ability to create a composite door, something that maybe the front of it has wood to mimic and somehow applied to another door other than straight manufactured out of aluminum with?
As far as the manufacturer for the door that was provided on the contract, they don't provide something like that. They do have that wood grain finish. It's not wood texture per se. It does have, it's not necessarily smooth like a standard panel door would be. But yeah.
Mr. Earnhaft?
I don't have a question, I had a comment, so it's,
Well, we're going to have discussion if there's any questions for the owner or the staff. If not, I'll take it to public hearing and then bring it back.
I had a question for staff. Would they be permitted to just paint this door? Like a wood grain color? Would they be permitted to do that? No, but what I'm trying to make the analogy to,
Unpainted finish, we want to retain the unpainted finish.
guess where I'm going is, if we're looking at it visually and we're trying to compare to the proposed material, which is this aluminum look, which obviously looks much cleaner and is a little more uniform, if they were permitted to paint the door, then technically speaking, I wouldn't see much of a distinction between that and perhaps the proposed safer product.
So you have the right to paint a door with permission for the paint color. Ma'am, if you're going to speak into the microphone, and were you sworn in at the beginning of the?
She was.
Yes, sir, I was. I see your point
And
that if
your
we
name,
were.
please,
Oh,
ma'am.
sorry. I'm Elizabeth Timberlake, homeowner of
Thank you.
1316. I see your point that if we painted it, it would give it the same look. So if that's a concern that this won't look true wood grain, if we're allowed to paint the door as is, it would end up giving it a very similar appearance to the aluminum door that we're trying to get, although the point of it is for impact purposes, if I'm correct in what you're trying to
Yes,
say.
in fact, I was trying to give you a friendly question because that would be your point, is you would want to put in this door, which we might feel is makes a visual difference to the effect of adversely impacting the historical feel. But if the reality is that your proposal can be similar to something you as a homeowner would do anyway, then maybe that would somewhat favor your position, just as a point of conversation.
Thank you, Ms. Dene. Any questions for staff for the owner?
Okay, another question
Mr.
for
Gillis.
staff. With the garage doors and front doors, if they replace it, don't they have to have it to match the existing? The one that they're proposing isn't matching. From what I'm seeing, you mentioned it, I mean, I'm looking at it, this one is vertical boards going straight up and down. It doesn't have and then I'm looking at the image on the screen. It's horizontal at the top and bottom, and that kind of maybe inset, or it has a panel of some sort?
I'm sorry, center of where exactly? On where the glass fixture is? Or?
On that image that you're showing right now, all of the boards are vertical. There's no horizontal element to it other than the glass portion or plastic portion. On the proposed, you have at the top and the bottom, forget if it's stiles or rails. I used to know the name, can't remember anymore. They're going horizontal on the top and bottom.
That's the construction of the two different door constructions completely. And I'll let the door expert.
Yeah, exactly that. Essentially, there's a larger glass panel that's is held within that horizontal members that you were pointing out.
Could I perhaps answer that since I took the measurements for the door? What you're looking at there, and Kevin, please correct me if I'm wrong, that's the frame for the door, so it's going to be bigger and actually fill the space, which they say is supposed to be safer for impact purposes. But I literally took a measuring tape and said, let's replicate it to a T. And we measured from top to bottom, so the impact glass will be exactly where the current glass is. The width of the lines that will be imitated will, down to T, it matches the current door. It's just going to be impact versus non-impact.
And so I'm sure that wasn't what Mr. Gillis was saying, and Kevin mentioned it earlier. The door construction is a box that has a fill, and the top and bottom are just part of the way the doors are constructed. My question, or maybe perhaps Mr. Gillis's question is there a way to reduce the visual impact of the top and bottom rail of the door?
We could try to reach out to the manufacturer to see if they have a smaller style option. But as far as at least to my knowledge, this is what they had come up with.
There are companies that are doing it on the corner of Obispo and Ferdinand. Very elegant one was done not too many years ago.
Okay, any questions for staff or the architect? If not, we'll take it to public hearing and then come back. Thank you both. Let me open the conversation to public hearing. Does anybody in the audience wish to speak in favor of this case? Anybody in opposition? Okay, hearing none, we're closing public hearing, bringing it back to the board for discussion and/or a motion.
So I just want to kind of explore this concept because I am somewhat disturbed by the boxing look. That didn't catch me at first in the drawing. So I do find a concern with that. It makes it different.
If the board's willing to approve it, if it were basically a replication but in an impact form, could we continue it to the next meeting to give them time to reach out to the manufacturer or potentially another manufacturer to see if that's possible? The issue that I come from is we allow people to replace their windows frequently. Some of the windows are quite elaborate in Coral Gables, so to allow windows and not allow doors, it's kind of incongruent philosophy there. I personally would try to save this door, but at the same time, I see the philosophy if we allow windows to be replaced, how do we deny a door to be changed?
You could certainly defer this item, and I think the applicant will have received the feedback from you all to see if there's a different design proposal they want to bring back.
Okay, I would make the motion to defer to the March meeting to give the applicant an opportunity to reach out to their current manufacturer or potentially identify a new one that could replicate the existing door. And if you send them pictures of what's currently existing, just could ask them if they'd be willing to make you a replica of it, but in an impact form.
Before there's a second, can we check with the owner to see if they're interested in a deferral, or would they like us to vote up or down today? And if you speak into the microphone, I'd appreciate it.
Sorry, I'm just confused because we sent a picture of the door and said replicate it exactly.
right?
But
So,
I think y'all are seeing something I don't see, that it's not an exact replica, and maybe that's due to impact standards, that something might have
what
changed.
the board is saying, ma'am, at this point is you either have an option of accepting an up or down vote today or sending it back to the manufacturer and saying it must look more like the original. The issue that we've heard twice is that there's a horizontal member on top and on bottom. Currently, it's just all vertical lines. And that's something that your door manufacturer should understand. But you may have already done that, which is why I'm asking you if you
Excuse me.
want the opportunity or not. Hold on, Bruce.
Oh, no, then we'd like the opportunity. So what y'all don't like is the frame around it, and you would like it to match and see if impact standards will allow that to where it's that door without the different shape lines going around. Yeah, then we'd be happy to try to do that.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Gillis, thank you. Is there a second?
Yes, I'd like to second that.
There's a second by Ms. Dene. Mr. Ehrenhalf, did you have?
No, because you're into the motion already.
That's
I had
okay.
other comments, so.
We can,
I wanted to clarify that doors of that period have vertical joined boards that are very heavy, and they have nothing on the top, and they go from filling the entire space, top to bottom. There's no, that door has a frame at the bottom, a frame on the two sides, and a frame at the top. And the normal door, the original door, has pieces of wood that are parallel from the top of the door to the base. This is outside of the box, but I was going to ask a question about why do they not consider getting an accordion, which they can remove. A simple accordion for a door like that can be installed in an hour and a half or two. And it will protect the unit during the storm.
thank you, Mr.
So-
Ehrenhalf. And they did express an opinion
Yeah.
on that. We
Yeah.
have a motion by Mr. Gillis, a second by Ms. Dene to continue the item to the next meeting. Can we call the roll, please?
Okay, Ms. Spain,
No.
Mr. Maxwell,
Yes, I'll defer.
Ms. Rolando,
Yes.
Mr. Silva,
Yes.
Mr. Ehrenhaft,
Yes.
Ms. Dene,
Yes,
Mr. Gillis.
Yes.
And Mr. Garcia Ponce.
Yes, motion to continue is approved 7-1. Thank you. And the last item, case file COA SP 2023-029 per section 14-204.6A3 of the Coral Gables zoning code. The Historic Preservation Board's review and approval of the proposed development located at 216 and 224 Catalonia Avenue, 3000 Ponce de Leon Boulevard, 203 University Drive, and 225 Malaga Avenue, legally described as lots 8 through 20, Block 29, Coral Gables Craft Section, according to the plat thereof, as recorded in Plat Book 10 at page 40 of the Public Records of Miami-Dade County, Florida, as a transfer of development receiving site is required to determine if the proposal adversely affects the historic, architectural, or aesthetic character of the historic properties. The following historically designated properties are within 500 feet of the proposed development. The historic Whiteway Lights, a local historic landmark located on Riviera Drive between Anastasia Avenue and University Drive, and on University Drive between Bird Road and Ponce de Leon Boulevard. 2901 Ponce de Leon Boulevard, legally described as Tract E, Plaza, Coral Gables, according to the plat thereof, as recorded in Plat Book 173, page 078 of the Public Record of Miami-Dade County, Florida. And 247 Malaga Avenue, legally described as lots 26 and 27, Block 29, Coral Gables Crafts Section, according to the plat thereof, as recorded in Plat Book 10, page 40 of the Public Record of Miami-Dade County, Florida. I have Before we get started, I have a question for the city attorney. Is this de novo, or does this continue from the last meeting?
So this is a discrete item that was proposed. We had a public hearing last time. I would suggest if you would like to open the public hearing and hear new presentations. It's my understanding that there was a change in the staff report and a change in the proposal. So I would suggest that it be essentially a de novo hearing, because I think what's before you today is a different item than was proposed last time.
Thank you. So for the board members, even if you said it at the last meeting, if there are any changes, make sure to reiterate things for this particular meeting. Also, prior to hearing it, does anybody have any ex parte communication regarding this item that they wish to share at this time? Ms. Pernas.
And just to clarify for today, the continuance was for the Historic Preservation Board's review and approval of the proposed development required to determine if the proposal adversely affects the historic, architectural, or aesthetic character of the historic properties located at within 500 feet of the proposed development, the historic Whiteway Light, 2901 Ponce de Leon Boulevard, and 247 Malaga Avenue. At the last hearing, just to clarify the motions that were made for the city plan amendments, a motion was to deny the request for the recommendation of the approval of the city commission for the amendment to the city plan to vacate the alley was made, and also a motion to approve the recommendation for approval to the city commission for the amendment of the city plan for the partial abandonment and vacation of the segment of University Drive. A motion to determine the proposal does adversely affect the historic and architectural and aesthetic character of the historic properties located within 500 feet failed to achieve a majority vote, resulting in the automatic continuance of this request to today's hearing. In staff's observations, the proposed development does not.
So is everyone clear as to the one thing that we're hearing today? Just one?
No,
Yes.
can you repeat that? That was not here.
Sure. Oh, okay, sorry.
I watched it, but still, please
Okay.
do that for me.
So from the,
Do you want me to summarize, Anna?
Yes.
today we're here reviewing the application for a receiving site for TDRs.
Yeah.
And
And its
only,
adverse effect to the historic properties within 500 feet.
and only that item. The other two have been voted on.
The report said that there was an error with where the Whiteway Light was.
So
or
that's where
something
we're
like that.
going now.
Okay,
Yes.
that's the part.
So
that
since the last meeting, the applicant has revised their submittal, and staff has observed that the development does not adversely affect the 3 historically designated properties within 500 feet. The existing Whiteway Light that exists on site will not be relocated and is not in conflict with the proposal and will remain in its original location. So staff is recommending that the proposal does not adversely affect the historic, architectural, or aesthetic character of the historic properties located within 500 feet, and to approve the proposal referred to Ponce Park residences.
I got that.
Got it.
Everyone's clear. Does the owner wish to present or make a comment?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board. For the record, Javier Fernandez, law office at 201 Alhambra Circle, Suite 1205. I will be exceedingly brief, as I try to be the last time, and just get to the gist of today's issue. If you can share our presentation, please. Oh, clicker. Thank you. Sorry. Okay, I'm going to just go through a couple slides. One, I think we're all aware of the posture of the item. That was clarified briefly. In 2022, a similar request was considered by this board. I just want to note for the record, it was approved by a vote of 6-0. The only difference between that request and the current one was the architectural style of the building. Last time we were before you, unfortunately, when the location of the Whiteway Light was cited on our plans, it was identified, I believe.
I'm sorry, Mr. Fernandez, can
Yes,
you go
sir.
back to that you just mentioned at the last vote?
Yes, so in 2022, this board considered a similar request to approve this as a receiving site. That portion of the request was approved by this board unanimously because it was determined there would be no adverse impact to the Whiteway Light.
So that portion.
That portion, not the vacation.
That's not what this clearly says.
I'm sorry, I wanted to, since we're only dealing with this item, I didn't realize I needed to clarify, but thank you for that clarification, Mr. Chairman. You will recall during our last discussion, which unfortunately was prolonged because of our error, and I apologize for that, we had indicated the Whiteway Lot we thought would be located in conflict with the egress door and the loading dock. Because of that prior vote, when I reviewed the record that evening, it caused me a great deal of consternation. I realize that the dimensions of the J&J Design Building, which is at the westernmost portion of our property, is in excess of 50 feet. The dimension for this loading area is about 40 feet. And if you look at where the Whiteway Light is on the map, it's actually somewhere in this area. And so I'll try to show you with some images how we came to the conclusion that it was improperly cited. And we have a slide that kind of overlays the current design with a survey just to confirm that it's now in the right posture. So quickly, again, this is our ground floor plan. This is the location of the Whiteway Light. You see there's not the conflict that we thought there was before. Overlaying it with the survey, again, here approximately is the location of the Whiteway Light. And then to give you, we asked our design team, given the prior, to prepare some design renderings to kind of show you in context. This is the current condition, right? You see the building very close to the Whiteway Light. Same perspective, this would be the relationship between the building and the Whiteway Light. From another angle, looking north and east, again, roughly the same context, same direction. And then from a frontal view, this is where it's located, and this is where roughly it would be within the proposed landscape. So we hope with this additional information, you could recommend approval of this, as we do believe and concur with staff's finding that there will be no adverse impact on that historic landmark. If you have any questions, happy to address them.
Just to confirm, so under your plan, there's going to be a greater distance from the building to the Whiteway Light.
Yes, ma'am.
Which, to me, would create a better focus for the light. So you have a greater distance now than exists in the current
Yes, I think it's
structure.
I think and again, I'm not a photometric expert, but I think it'll do a better job of lighting the sidewalk, and also it'll improve the relationship between the light and the building than the current condition.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dene. Any questions for Mr. Gillis?
Okay, 247 Malaga Avenue. Your proposed development, will it cast a shadow over that building?
I do not believe it will, but I would defer to staff, and I don't want to provide any sort of expert testimony on that point. I think the report does not indicate that it would have any adverse impact. Is the best I can answer that question.
Mr. Fernandez, do you have an aerial or site plan or in your presentation?
I do not believe we do in this one, since we condensed it just to deal with this one issue. Maybe.
There we go.
Yeah. I'm trying to figure out exactly which is 247. I don't know if Ms. Pernis can help me identify it here. I believe it's roughly in this area, but I don't want to misspeak. So again, I don't want to misrepresent that as a fact, sir.
So, Mr. Gillis, the sun rises on the east and sets in the west.
So I believe in the morning it would cast a shadow on that building. So how does that not impact the aesthetic character of that historic resource?
The only thing I can offer by way of a comment, informed comment on that, sir, is to say that the prior iteration of this project that was approved in 2022 was for a much taller structure. This is a substantially shorter building, and that's the only thing I could offer by way of a response to your question.
Okay.
Mr. Silva?
I have a question for staff, I guess for Ms. Throckmorton. So at the last meeting, we recommended denials to the commission for the vacation of the alley, right? So if the commission chooses to uphold that recommendation, this project is denied.
I believe Mr. Fernandez has lots of unanswered questions yet before this project can go forward. There's multiple things that need to go to the city commission for final approval.
Correct.
So yes.
And my question then is, if we approve this discrete item, the TDRs, do they live with the site?
They leave with this proposal. So that's why this is coming back a second time and didn't just get to proceed with that previous approval in 2021, because if the proposal changes, and I would say significantly, it'd have to look at the code, but then it would have to come back as another receiving site approval. So it's this iteration of this proposal, which is why it's here again.
Thank you.
Question for staff.
Mr. Gillis?
The plaza development, that received transfer development rights next to the Arts Center, that huge development.
I'm not familiar. I'm not sure.
Ms. Couts?
We don't know.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear. What
No, she's not, she also doesn't know. He's talking about the plaza development across the street.
How did that happen?
Wait, so Mr. Gillis.
Wait, that's not what this hearing is for.
Ms. Perenas, Mr. Gillis, let's ask about this particular
Well, the
project,
reason
please.
that I wouldn't want to unfairly harm this development, because that's a much larger development, and that arts center is one of our most significant historic resources. So if we're saying that didn't impact the aesthetic character of the arts center, I don't know how I could say that this building is going to impact 247 Malaga. So I'm
So
trying to help the applicant.
It is our charge to look at every case individually.
Yeah.
Okay, if there are no further questions for staff for the owner, I'll open to public comment.
Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Let's open it to public comment, or anybody here to speak in support, in favor of this case? Anybody wishes to speak in opposition? Hearing none, we're going to close public hearing and bring it back to the board for discussion.
My only concern last time was the moving of the White Way light. The fact that they're leaving it there, I'm comfortable with the proposal.
Thank you, Ms. Payne.
And just for the record, all the public comment that we received was circulated to you all this morning.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Perenas.
And I do like the fact that I believe the beauty of the light is really shining, so I greatly appreciate that.
I think they should put a plaque next to it.
All right, is there any interest in making a motion?
I'll make a motion. I make a motion that we've determined that the proposal does not adversely affect the historic, architectural, or aesthetic character of the historic properties located within 500 feet of the site, namely the White Way streetlights, a local historic landmark, and the others that we've already been mentioned, which aren't mentioned here, and to approve the proposal referred to as Ponds Park residences with the understanding that it requires further review and approval by the City Commission.
And I'd like to second that
Ms.
motion.
Dene, second. So we have a
second.
motion by Ms. Spain, a second by Ms. Dene to approve the transfer. Can we call the roll, please?
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
before,
Mr. Silva.
Just before we call roll, I just want to, if I may,
Yeah,
I want to point out a lot of the public comment that we received was focused on the vacation of the alley. I just want to point out that that was discussed at the last meeting, and that was denied at the last meeting. So that's not the proposal we're voting on today. This is just for the TDRs.
thank you for the clarification. We do have the motion and the second on the transfer only. Can we call the roll, please?
Okay. Mr. Maxwell?
Yes.
Ms. Rolando?
Yes.
Mr. Silva?
Yes.
Mr. Gillis?
Yes, on the transfer only.
Mr. Ehrenhaft?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Spain?
Yes.
Ms. Dene?
Yes.
Mr. Garcia Ponce?
Yes, motion to approve passes 8-0. Thank you, everybody. Ms. Perenas.
Yes, sir.
Any items for the secretary or discussion items?
Yes, actually, if we could put the presentation back up, I did want to bring forward the two properties that had been previously discussed and mentioned by Mr. Gillis for 825 South Alhambra and 9485 Old Cutler Road. Sorry, there we go. Okay. I believe this is the 825 South Alhambra Circle property that was mentioned. This property is at the rear of an existing house on South Alhambra that is a newer construction building, the residence. And then this property was included in the 1950s tax card, but was not part of the original permit application for the property. This is built as a storage building. Originally, this was just a boat slip, and in the 1970s was altered to include, to install new windows, a whole new roof system, and a steel frame on the interior of the building. The kind of discussion that we had was that the building may fall into the category of the Coral Rock thematic group, but it is outside the, sorry, I lost my notes. The outside the period of significance for that thematic group. Again, we always have the determination request per process through the city code for any demolitions or the buildings, and we're being flagged a lot of times for properties that are being majorly modified, and working with development services so that we're tagged on any demolition within the permitting system. We will get there, but it's something we are working on.
Ms. Bennett, what are the years again? What's the years of the time
So I
period on
couldn't
this
find
one?
the original drawings for this one. I did see the 1977 application for the installation of the windows, roof, and the steel frame. And then the tax card for the property is, the residence is 1943. The, hold on, I have it here. I don't know why I'm trying to do it off memory. The residence was 1941, the garage was 1943, and then what they have here is carport, and then storage is kind of the 1957,
Thank you.
and pool.
The period of significance?
For the thematic Coral Rock group ends on, 1943 to, the thematic rock group is 1906 to 1938.
38. Okay, thank you. You want to do them both or one at a time?
Yep, and then the next property was the water tower that is located at 9485 Old Cutler Road. This is part of the original development of Arthur Vining Davis at Journey's End, and was transformed as a lookout tower for sightsee, for his guests that wanted to sightsee, per a 1956 article that we received, but was originally an Art Deco style water tower. The listings that we found just for the property now, it's a little bit difficult to get information because all of the fabric from that time period of Arthur Davis is pretty much been demolished, and Journey's End has been redeveloped as more new construction. But the listings for this specific property that was recently on sale mentioned that the tower was renovated to like a guest house and office, but that the original elevator that he had installed in it was there. So again, it's not in threat for the flood zone because we had talked about it being in the minimal flood zone, and then we have that process for determination of any properties that request demolition.
And did you give us a year and I missed it?
The one that I could find on here was through a 1956 article just stating of when Arthur Vining Davis had come to acquire the property in the 1940s.
1940s. Thank you so much. Mr. Gillis.
Okay, the period of significance for the Coral Rock thematic group, why was that selected? Why was that the date period that was selected? Is that because the last one was constructed in 1938?
Probably the last one that was included within that designation report. I'll have to double check that since it was done a few years ago, many years ago, and I was not here for it.
Because it seems to me this would be another, from my understanding, the Coral Rock cottage that was designated on Davis Road was not included in that. It was done separately. So, I don't know, I've been by this building. I just don't see how it has never been preserved, per se. But I'd like to hear from the other board members if they're interested, or what else could be done about this. I mean, maybe the homeowners could be reached out to at least start an initial discussion to make sure you can look at it and see that it's a unique building material, so.
We could send a letter to the owners, just kind of that I mentioned to them that we have, our board has had discussion on it. But without it being a threat and it being an older Coral Rock building that seemed to have a significant renovation in the 70s, it actually didn't even have windows originally. The windows were added in the 70s along with the existing roof structure that's there now. It was more of it seemed to be because of this permit drawing that it was an open kind of storage building beforehand, and then the windows were added later on.
Well, before we send a letter, let's have some discussion on the board. Does anybody have any thoughts or comments, or Or none?
There was no permits in the system current that are, putting the building at threat or for the development of the site that I saw.
So the building was 1957? Approximately?
In the tax card is between the development of the site runs from 43 to 57.
It doesn't have to necessarily be in the thematic group. I mean, it meets the time frame, and it also,
Yeah.
and it could meet, other characteristics. So,
Yeah, I don't think staff just gave us
Yeah.
information.
yeah.
This
Go
is just
for
an
it.
initial pass of kind of what we can get. Again, it's a storage building and the site has been demoed and a new house constructed later on. So it's not even the original site of the property.
Oh, so
So that was
the original
maintained.
house is gone?
Right.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, very altered many times.
Yeah, that may
Yeah,
be-
I think is what's happening. Multiple additions, changes of style, and so it's like no longer what was there.
Most of these Coral Rock kind of vernacular buildings, including the one on Davis, there's not a lot of records on them. I don't think they had
Right,
architecture.
yeah, and so the last thing that I saw, at least for that building, was 2000, where they did an interior renovation. And what they did is add like tile floors and renovate the bathroom. And it's 2 rooms and a bath and 2 bathrooms in the middle for that interior renovation permit.
Okay.
I wonder if they quarried the rock on
Mr.
site.
Silva?
Just a quick, I'm sorry if I missed it. You said that building falls in the flood, falls?
No, it does not.
It does not, it does not,
No.
okay.
Neither of them do.
Okay, so we're gonna send a letter saying hello and we talked about it?
We can do that.
Okay.
We're here. We can do that. Okay, so those were those 2, and then
About the old Cutler, that's a much more,
Yeah, I think that one, if we'd have kind of to go back to the Miami-Dade records also, since it was originally a water tower. The development of the site, like I said, everything surrounding it is relatively new. The Journey's End recognizes it, and I saw it in one of their homeowners associations, things that they highlighted as one of the original features of their founder and all of that. So it is something that, again, is protected with our demolition process of requiring the determination. I think its connection back to Arthur Vining Davis is important, but again, I saw no development of the site. The property was for sale recently, but was kind of marketed as having this beautiful tower and it has like a guest house, and there were some interior photos that were interesting, and some of the original features on the inside were still there.
so it's not currently in a flood zone, but it is on Old Cutler. So that's very close to the coast. If those flood zones were changed, then this could be,
And we could do the same. I mean, I think what we would like to kind of see where the new owner is, kind of understand where their plans are maybe for the site. Again, explain to them that we have that demolition process, but I think it's one of those buildings that's not as an immediate threat. I understand that we can't control the state legislation because that's out of our hands, but even with that state legislation, they put timelines on like properties having to be designated X amount of years earlier or being on the National Register within a certain time frame. So I don't know if something happens today that it'll fix tomorrow's problem, just on the way that they've been approaching these.
one of the reasons I brought these properties up to share with the board is that in speaking to friends and residents, one of the criticisms has been that this board has been preserving a lot of the 1920s cottages, but some of the the later in years, but younger in a sense, the brutalist buildings, the modern buildings, and structures like this that are so unique have not been preserved. So I would like to see the board take an action, especially on this one, to move this forward so that it is officially preserved. But I mean, if you want to start by reaching out with a letter,
I would like that.
you may find that the
Try to give them
people-
some time and just sit down with them, explain to them the conditions and what it means and all of that. I think it's important to kind of give the owners opportunity.
I mean, if this isn't a historic building, what would be south of US 1? That's the way that I kind of
Yeah.
look at it. So thank you.
Mr.
problem.
Earnhardt?
Quick question. If the current state, which is in flux in Tallahassee, for the flood zone legislations, but my recollection was that early on, that if a property owner actually came forward and requested that it be historically designated, would that
I
then?
remember there being a condition that if it was done on the,
Yes.
at the request of the property owner.
Yes, I'm not sure if that exists in the
the
current
current
version of
version,
things, but.
And that actually goes to my next
And
discussion point.
And I understand that could be in flux, but if that's the case,
Yeah.
and if the property owner appreciates
Is amenable to
the,
that.
the value of this, they might be willing to volunteer office.
Yeah, that's why we want just to be able to
So,
communicate with them
I
initially.
think that would be a good idea.
Yes, Mr. Maxwell.
Since we're looking at this particular area, I would very much encourage the city staff to also look at Matheson Hammock Park. We have county facilities located with historic county facilities located 2 blocks from
That
there.
one is designated.
That are falling apart and that are within our city and our jurisdiction, even though they're owned by the county. So, there's a greenhouse that is, by William Lyman Phillips, and also the entry gate to Matheson Hammock Park, both of which those structures are very historic. They're CCC structures, and one of them is quite prominent and quite prominently falling down. So we're not doing our job, in maintaining that and working with our sister, brother, cousin, whatever, at the county. So I think that the two of those things should maybe all go together. Or at least in your look, not necessarily in the same letter, but
different.
in a look south.
So there was, recently, the county came with some questions about some of the buildings in Matheson Hammock. Maybe you can check in.
Yeah, I have a contact there that had been reaching out to us with some work that they were proposing for the site for some bathroom improvements and things like that, so.
I would also include Fairchild, Tropical Park, because, they've just done some things, recently to the Bailey Palm Glade that significantly changed, how that works. They're trying to meet code, but they sure didn't do a very good job of it. And I think that, looking at that and that sort of totality, we need to begin to look at that and put places like Fairchild on notice that they need to come to us, when they're having things like that.
Actually, they don't.
Right, so there's jurisdictional questions, but if you can, then maybe come back with an update, unless Mr. Erdenhoff was next, but if you have something, Ms. Spain.
The only part of Fairchild that is designated as historic is the gatehouse. The rest of the property is not designated. So when they change their exhibits, that does not have to come to this board.
It's not about the exhibit, it's about when they change the facilities.
I understand, but the only building that's designated as historic is that gatehouse when you first enter it. The other buildings, the rest of the property is not designated as historic. That's a conversation we can have, but that's what it is
I
now.
understand. At least my intention, Ms. Spain, was to see if Ms. Pernis would begin to move that process a little bit more forward. Because, we have these things and we're going to lose them, simply because we haven't exercised the jurisdiction over it.
Thank you, Mr. Maxwell. Mr. Erdenhoff.
I was just going to add that in addition, there are multiple other structures. There's an incinerator on the side, which is on the water side. There is an oolitic stone structure that has bathroom facilities in it. There are all of the from the works project, the walls. Walls, along. A multitude of things, so.
I was not involved in the designation. I just know what's designated.
I would really propose that we move forward, in beginning to designate some of these things in a large way. Otherwise, we're going to lose them. We're going to lose them to bad maintenance, which is what's happening right now, and or lack of, or just benign neglect. And these are pretty important little things, I think.
So,
They're designed by the man that made Bach Tower landscaping.
Ms. Pernis, could you follow up with the county on the Matheson Hammock Park? And verify with Matheson Hammock Park with jurisdiction, make sure that we understand all jurisdictional relevance with that particular property. And then if you wish to add another letter to Fairchild and check in with them as well and give us a report back.
Yep, will do.
Okay. We're still in old business, folks. We're still old business. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that since we were discussing the bills that were coming up, the commission passed a resolution at the last meeting opposing SB 1526 and HB 1647. The properties that are being affected must be seaward of the coastal construction control line, which Coral Gables does not fall under. It's still a preemption that we should be showing opposition toward, and that's what the commission felt and passed the resolution the last meeting.
Hold on. And Madam City Attorney, I think we talked about this board last year had a recommendation to the city commission to do exactly what they did at this last
They
meeting.
jumped the gun this time. They did it without you.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Silva, that's sort of, I think, your comment from the last meeting. They beat us to it.
That's it from me.
Thank you. Any new business? Or any,
This is old business,
Yes,
but I
ma'am.
do
Ms.
have
Spain.
something. I'm concerned about historic fabric closer to home. I'm going to bring up the
gonna
windows
guess.
again. Because I really think that there may be a window of opportunity here that we can actually convince the city commission to save these buildings and restore them other than to replace them with new. I know that they received a ton of money to replace the windows, but maybe that's something that can be modified, so we could still use that money. I do think that you could contact the National Trust, because they could weigh in on whether or not they're significant to this building. And that would be helpful, because I'm sure that if you talk to someone at the state level or the national level, that they would consider, since this is a national landmark, that the original windows should stay.
I know I did something similar like that for my position at City of Miami, and they actually said that they would not put
Past,
anything
I'm
in
not
writing.
getting involved.
So it just depends, I think, on there's a, relatively new preservation officer, but again, we could reach out and just
Yeah,
see.
they have in the past.
And I think, right, they did, that's why we had reached out
Right.
originally. But I think just depending on who's staffed there, there has, I mean, in light of the last commission meeting, the city manager was fired, so we do have kind of a new interim
I know
city
he
manager.
was adamantly opposed to keeping them, so I think at this point, quite possibly, we could just let the commission know what the proper thing is to do with these windows. I'm just saying.
so and we're talking, just for clarity, the Coral Gables City Hall window replacement. Ms. Berenas, we did pass a resolution to the commission with an order of things as to,
Yes.
is there an
Yes.
update on?
And that actually falls in the motion that was passed with the funds was for $2 million.
I don't.
And I believe it says, it doesn't say specifically replacement.
Oh, it doesn't.
No, I believe, and then it was for modifications of the windows and anything to come back here, but also for me to be involved in any discussions that have been having.
So again, that is if the city manager chooses to proceed under the exemption in the zoning code that exempts that process, exempts you all from that process.
If
So
not, we would still be part of the original
that's all
process.
contingent.
I understand.
So, yeah, nothing has proceeded.
Right,
on
so I
that end.
can meet with the interim city manager and see if there's action that he is going to be taking, or if that's something that's going to fall on a new permanent city manager.
He may not want to go forward with something since he's an interim, but I just think it's so important that these original windows stay in this building. And it's a big mistake for the building to bypass the Historic Preservation Board that they've put in place on something that's so important. I would be very upset if
And the motion was that it would come
decides to
here.
go that way. That's
Right.
not necessarily what will happen, because there is that clause in the zoning code that allows them to go forward on city buildings without.
So Donna, but that was the resolution that was adopted by the commission, that should the city manager proceed under that exemption under the zoning code, it would still come to you all for review and recommendation. It would not be binding, but it would still come to you all. So either way it proceeds, it will be coming to you all unless there's a change in legislation. by the commission.
So that was the action that they took after the motion that you all had made.
I'm happy, I have it right here if you'd like me to read it to you, what it
Yeah, I
said.
believe you.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Pettis. I think we'd all appreciate it if you have a moment with the interim city manager to bring this item up,
Yes.
because our intention isn't just the kind of late in the game conversation. We want to be there early in the game, so as
Yes.
early as you can, we'd appreciate
And
it.
the last meeting that I had with the previous city manager and the staff working on that was with Public Works. We had planned for him to come within the next 2 months to present. So we will see where that lands, and I will follow up with the interim to see if that's something that they want to take on, or is that something that we want to push on to the new permanent?
Mr. Maxwell?
You know, when I presented the motion to the commission, you know, we had a slight discussion, and, you know, there's lots of alternatives to this, you know, where the windows have to be removed. They need to be, you know, and because we have to, you know, the frames around that all have to be filled in. And so the windows do need to be taken out, but they can be put back and should be put back, as Mrs. Spain is saying. And any hurricane protection can be on the inside.
Right, and that was another motion that you all had
Yeah.
made, and we had this.
I mean, the windows aren't open anyway, so I mean, put a fixed pane in there, you know, make it look good.
So we're not changing our motion or our intentions. We would just like for you to please check in.
Yes, I can do that. One of the comments that came up when we talked about the interior panel was, you all would be then okay if the windows are not operable. And said that
Absolutely.
there's a give and take sometimes of what is, you know, this is where,
When was the
I'm
last
letting you know where the
time
discussion, I'm letting you know where this discussion
I
ended
started
up.
working here in 1997, never, and have
I'm not
worked
sure
in
anyone's turning around and
multiple
opening the windows behind you.
offices all around this.
Mine open.
Never opened up a window.
I open mine all the time. Mine
you?
open.
He has a great third floor view.
Ms. Pettinas, or from the board, any other old business from the
Hey,
board?
this is the feedback that I received.
Any other old business? Mr.
Streetlights.
Ehrenhaft?
Do we need to make
No,
a statement that we're okay with them not being operable?
no.
Okay, all right.
I think we need to go
Okay.
there.
Mr. Maxwell?
Ms. Paranis, is there any update on the meeting regarding the streetlights?
I was waiting for the city clerk to get back to me for March 13th, and I believe that the board liaison is out of the office, so I'm waiting to hear back to
March
do
13th
that.
would be the joint meeting?
Yes, that's the date that
Perhaps we're not
depending
putting
on the
anything-
confirmation that I receive. We'll plan for a 4 o'clock meeting at the police and fire station, so that we have a bigger room.
Let's not say anything on the record until it's on the record.
Right.
So we don't know when it's going to happen.
Don't know what's going to
No
happen.
confirmed date at
No
this time.
confirmed date.
Thank you.
Anything else from the board? Mr. Silva?
Just, I think we need to vote to excuse Mr. Durana.
No, there's no more votes to excuse.
So an email was sent out by the city clerk's office so that you all are aware that excused absences are actually excused by staff. And there are 3 reasons why you are excused, and that is sickness, illness, travel, and jury duty. If you are not one of those 3, you are considered unexcused. So please, if you are submitting to me a request, let me know.
And the request needs to be made prior to the board
Yes.
meeting.
If you can.
Yeah, ideally-
Illness is illness,
Right,
but yes.
And did we all receive the notice? If you didn't receive one from
The clerk's office.
the clerk's
yeah.
office, check your email, because they did send it out. Anything else from the board? Staff? Any motion to adjourn?
Motion?
Motion to adjourn. Second?
Second.
Ms. Spain, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion is, meeting's adjourned at 6:05. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for a wonderfully concise and streamlined meeting.
How did everyone feel about
Recording
it?
stopped.